The presenting sponsor for OnEducation is Schoology. Schoology is not only the best learning management system, it's also a community of lifelong learners. There are so many things to love about Schoology, but my favorite is the company's passion to connect with their teachers and students to deliver the best product possible. If you want to learn more about Schoology and how they can help you advance what's possible, visit Schoology.com. OnEducation is also brought to you by Project Pals. Project-based learning has come a long way since poster boards and paper cutouts. Digital platforms like Project Pals have cut teacher prep time in half to allow more time for research and learning. They can either choose from the dozens of projects available in the catalog or create a tailored project from scratch. Project Pal's multi-purpose platform allows students to work in real time to create project assets, import media, and save their resources all in one place. Solidly grounded in years of research, Project Pals is your all-in-one solution for student-centered inquiries and group projects.
You know, if you have a problem with what I'm saying about U.S. politics, come on the show and come at me. It's fine. Welcome to OnEducation. I'm Mike Washburn.
And I'm Glen Irvin. Friends, we have a special pod for you today. We're turning the tables and being interviewed by Dylan Rodgers from Innovation and Tech Today. This is going to be awesome.
It's going to be very awesome. Know what else is awesome?
What else is awesome?
I've had Baby Shark in my head all week.
What is Baby Shark?
Anyone with kids that are like probably 2 to 5 or 6? How old's your youngest?
My youngest is 6.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, good.
6 and 11.
Don't show your youngest Baby Shark. It's a song.
Is it on
it's
YouTube?
The Baby Shark do 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 do. Baby Shark do 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 do.
Sounds.
If you actually look online, James Corden did a bit on it just last week. That's what got it in my head because I was getting close to getting it out of my head, and then I saw James Corden do a little bit with Sophie Turner and Josh Groban, and it was hysterical. It's a song, and it's taking the world by storm, and it's terrible, and it infects your brain.
Sounds awesome. Is it
like
a Fox song?
right. It's like that, and before that was Gangnam Style, and
yes.
So no, Baby Shark is
the new one. I'm gonna listen to it.
Baby Shark is this year's What Does the Fox Say?
Okay.
Except way worse. They get worse, right? Because Gangnam Style wasn't actually that bad, all things considered.
It was good. It was fun.
And What Does the Fox Say
was
is just
hilarious.
a little bit worse than that. Right? A little bit more obnoxious. And then now we've hit full obnoxious with Baby Shark.
All right. I can't wait to see it. It is stuck in your head, huh?
Oh, it's awful.
All right.
I need to listen to Africa by Toto a few times to get something cool in my head again. I think that's what I'm going to do after this is just put Africa on blast.
That's the song you choose for...
Dude, that's a wicked song. Don't even start with me
awesome.
If you don't like Africa.
No, I like it. It's just an interesting song to choose to counter Baby Shark.
Yes, you counter Baby Shark with Toto.
That is awesome.
Did you hear about this? So I have Minecraft Dungeons.
Okay.
This is a thing. This is a game.
This is crazy. It's like a role-playing game?
Like a whole other game being announced by Microsoft called Minecraft Dungeons. It looks kind of isometric, almost like Diablo.
Oh.
I'm wondering.
Okay.
If it's going to be like Diablo.
That sounds interesting.
But it'd be cool. There's a lot of questions. No, they didn't really say what it is or what it's going to be like. But if it was like Minecraft themed Diablo, but if you could build in it still,
that would be awesome.
Would be rad.
Yes.
Like if you could build walls or break down walls or I don't know.
So they're not telling us exactly what it is.
It sounds like a dungeon crawler.
Okay.
So it sounds like Diablo.
Yes.
But in like a Minecraft style, I'll play that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It looks fun
cool
to me.
Yeah, it sounds like a cool idea.
Yeah. So this is interesting. It was announced at the Minecon. So Minecon, which is like the Minecraft official Minecraft convention.
Yes, the big convention.
And yeah, they call it Minecraft Dungeons. Players can take on the world alone or as part of a 4-person group. Sounds like Diablo. An enhanced version of Minecraft's familiar landscape of blocks. But the screenshot that comes with it has a very Diablo look, right? The isometric.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. It's interesting. It's a cool look. I like it.
And like the graphics are just a little bit better, right?
Yes.
So it's definitely not voxel. Like that's just an intentional graphic style. I don't think that's the same as like a voxel type, design. And then there was an update announced, Minecraft update called Village and Pillage, which introduces new players, new NPCs.
Oh, that's awesome. New people into the game.
New people, librarian, butcher. The one that was interesting was this one, the barbarians.
Oh,
so there's people who are going to, there's NPCs that will attack the villages.
Oh, that's sad. So it's not just monsters that they have to worry about now, it's the barbarians? Poor NPCs.
Right, but these will attack the NPC villages.
That's what I mean.
I guess.
Poor guys.
Poor guys. Yeah.
Going about doing their
as if they didn't have enough to worry about with us.
With zombies and everybody else.
Coming and ruining their lives.
Yes, exactly.
Breaking down their houses, or even worse. You know what I used to do is crowd them all into one house and then lock them in it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then you have the whole. That's dark, eh?
If it's one super important guy, I always lock them in a little block thing so that I could always come back and trade with them, and also so that they wouldn't get murdered by a zombie at night. So it was kind of for their own protection.
Was I telling you about the golem spawner that I built,
No.
or that I built with some buddies that had them all like in like a little cage?
No,
up top. And it made it was to simulate it being in a city, so it spawned iron golems, and then you burn the iron golems and you get iron. It was like an iron farm.
Oh yeah,
but
guys.
Poor villagers. You're like, what an existence! It's like the San Diego Zoo, but for Minecraft villagers.
Poor NPCs. They have a bad life.
I feel sort of bad.
They have a bad life. Yeah.
What else do we got to talk about? Your conference.
Yes, next weekend on Saturday, I'm speaking and then also presenting at, I guess, both speaking and then doing a workshop at the CCFLT conference. It's the Colorado Congress of Foreign Language Teachers. So that will be in the Denver area, and I'll be hanging around with Noah. It'll be awesome. Noah Geisel, friend of the pod.
Right. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Yes, because he's
when I was setting up the schedule for like the next month or so of podcast, I'm like, why is there a gap? And what is supposed to be in that gap? We're doing a pod. Guys, have you talked to Noah about this yet?
I have not. But he's always willing to do stuff, so we should be good.
Noah's hearing here for the first time that he's going to do the podcast with us next week.
Yeah, and he's all about that too. So we'll do it live from Denver, Colorado, and maybe in Noah's living room or something like that.
Sweet. I'm excited about that. First third-time guest.
I know. He's just all over the pod.
Noah. Geisel.
He is awesome.
He's the man.
Yes, he is.
All right. So that's next week.
That's next weekend, yes.
Wow. And your keynote is exceptional. I've read it.
The keynote, I'm still working on it because I want some more interactive elements. I actually have had.
Are you gonna make them dance?
Yep. To the Fox song. No.
Right.
The Macarena, since it's a language teacher's conference.
Right.
Something it just is annoying.
That's it.
No, it's just want some interactive elements where people can, give their, kind of give their input on several different things that I'm presenting about. So I think it's going to go awesome, and so have several people look at it, including you. So good feedback. So I think it's going to be a fantastic conference. Great educators there, and hopefully everybody. And I get to meet a lot of people and learn a lot.
Have you keynoted a conference before?
I have not like this. Not like where it's official, where you're actually getting upfront. But since I'm doing it this month in October, or this next month in October, then I might as well do it again in November. I'm doing it again in November, so
the same. Are you gonna give the same talk basically?
I'm not. I'm going to use components of it, but the one that I'm presenting on in November is a tech conference, more suited to that. So I'm definitely gonna angle it at some tech elements, more kind of like about the things that we'd like to talk about, whether it be gamification, game-based learning, or just being innovative, taking risks, those kinds of things. Right. So that's that one, but I won't worry about that until I get through with this one.
Yeah, one at a time.
Yes.
Nice. That's awesome. What else you got going on?
Well, I was reading an article that talked about that over a quarter of U.S. households own one of the smart speakers. So I have one in my house too, and I was like, oh, that'd be interesting whether or not we should be using smart speakers in classes. And so I've heard of this movement, and there's several different teachers who are using them, and it would be interesting to hear more ideas about how that could be a useful component, to have some artificial intelligence in class and be able to answer kind of those Google kind of questions. But maybe even expand it beyond that. So I don't know what that would actually be. So it'd be interesting to hear from our audience. What are people using, or how are they using smart speakers in their classes? Have you heard of that, Mike?
I haven't. Yeah. I would just use it to find out if there's going to be indoor recess.
Yeah, for the weather, of course. Yeah, you want
Google. Hey Google, is it going to rain in the next 10 minutes?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, to be able to do the weather, different kinds of aspects. But I've heard that this is a movement in class. I just want to hear more about, what specifically are you using it for? It's kind of like a little home base. Instead of doing a quick Google search, typing something out, you ask it a specific question or whatever those things might be.
That would be interesting. I have Google Homes. I have two of them. We have a big one in the living room, and then we have the mini in the bedroom. We literally use it almost exclusively for the weather in the morning. I use it for the alarm sometimes.
Okay.
And we play music every once in a while on it, because the speakers are actually quite good. Like at least the Google Home speakers are. What else have we done with it? We could hook it up to our Nest thermostat.
Yeah.
But I don't think we've done that yet. And I do have it hooked up to turn off the TV.
Oh, look at you. Fancy.
Well, but I don't know what I'd use it for at school other than checking the weather.
Yeah. And I think there's some innovative uses out there. So I want to hear more about that. And maybe we could bring some stories back, or even a guest who uses this in some kind of innovative way. Because it's a really cool technology.
I would love to learn more about that.
It'd be cool to see how people are pushing it to beyond, kind of what we normally would use it for.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, we are going to skip a much larger next segment, because we have a special segment coming up next. We were interviewed by Dylan Rodgers from Innovation and Tech Today magazine. He came on our show, and then we handed over control of the interview to him, and he interviewed us. And it's quite a bit longer. So this episode will be a normal length episode, but mostly now it's an interview. So when we come back, we'll be speaking with Dylan Rodgers.
OnEducation is brought to you by Teacher Gaming. Teacher Gaming Desk is an all-in-one toolkit for any teacher looking to use more games in their classroom. And Teacher Gaming just launched a dedicated Chromebook subscription bundle with 20 awesome games. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's only $99 per class per year. So you got your whole class, you got 20 different games that can be played on a Chromebook. How great is that? If you want to learn more about Teacher Gaming, simply go to teachergaming.com to get started.
All right, welcome back to the podcast. We're joined by Dylan Rodgers. Dylan is the managing editor of Innovation and Tech Today. Welcome to the podcast, Dylan.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So we're doing something a little different this time. This is going to be a whole lot of fun. We know Dylan from other things, and Dylan got in touch with us recently and said, we should do some stuff together. And we like doing stuff with people because, doing stuff is fun. And Dylan, Innovation in Tech Today is a magazine, and you guys do lots of stuff. Actually, before we go into what's actually happening here, why don't you tell us? I'll give you a chance to do a little plug. What's Innovation in Tech Today, Dylan?
Okay, so I am the managing editor, like you said, of Innovation in Tech Today. It's an online and print publication. We have some subsidiary publications as well, and it's all about the way that tech is transforming the human experience. So, we cover different topics, anywhere from, news and business and outdoor tech, science. I mean, all kinds of things. There's something there for everybody. And education is a big part of that, right? I mean, education tech is such a big, such a big market, but also just such a big driver in what's happening in the world today. And it's, that's exactly why I wanted to come on here and talk with you guys.
Awesome. Okay, so this is what is happening. Dylan is actually interviewing us, which is bizarre. But we're gonna actually I'm gonna stop talking, believe it or not.
Wow.
And pass it off to Dylan. Take it away, dude.
Awesome. Well, this is good. All right. So, have you guys been interviewed? You haven't been interviewed on your podcast before, have you?
I don't think so.
Never.
No.
Excellent. Well, there's a first for everything. So, let's go ahead and kick this off. So, you launched your podcast on education in March 2018, and I remember when this happened. And then all of a sudden, it was just at the top of the education technology podcast categories. Well, yeah. First of all, what's that like?
Glenn, what's that like?
It's really surreal, I would say. I mean, we knew that there was a need. We both thought that there was a need for this, but it was going to be difficult, I thought, to just kind of get the word out. That's actually probably the most difficult part, is just trying to get, once people start listening to it, I think they really enjoy it. They like the topics. But I didn't think it would be that quickly that a lot of people would start listening to it. How about you, Mike?
Seeing ourselves on the charts the first time was surreal.
Yeah,
like on the charts themselves, and then the first time we were number one on the charts was really weird. Like there was a lot of language back and forth between Glen and I. We were excited, like it was crazy. I couldn't believe it, to be honest. So it's pretty weird. I don't know what other word to use. It's obviously we're honored and love that people like it. So but it's been a weird experience, that's for sure.
So what was the reason for starting your podcast in the first place?
I think Mike had the original idea because he approached me at Schoology Next 20
just after Next,
17. Because it was a while back, and I thought he was just some crazy guy talking to me. I didn't really take it seriously, but then he came back. When did you actually start talking to me for real, Mike? November, maybe?
So, yeah, probably in November of 2017, and basically you said, "Listen, things are happening over here." Like he was leaving his job and getting ready to move and start a new one, and said, why don't we wait and talk about this more in like December or January of 2018. So I waited. I didn't want to do this alone. So this was I love podcasts. I listen to tons of them. It's really the only thing I listen to in my car, mostly politics podcasts, but a little bit of other things as well. And I wanted to do one. I thought, this is something I can figure out how to do, I think. And so but I didn't want to do it alone. I wasn't as confident in my voice, I guess, as I am now, but I certainly didn't want to do it alone. And I was looking for someone that was interesting and smart and engaging.
Whoa.
And there we go. That
sounds like a proposal.
That seemed to be Glen. So I approached him, and we started talking about it seriously in January and worked for a few months, and then in March we kind of hit the go button on it. But it's been a lot of work. But I think that the genre and the medium there's very low barriers to entry. It's easy for a lot of people to actually just get into and do. Being successful is a different story, but
right.
It's not overly hard, I guess.
Well, I know you guys have day jobs. So how many hours are you putting in a week on this, you think?
Mike puts in a lot more hours than me.
I see.
Because he manages basically all of the business aspects of this, which I didn't know that there would be business aspects of this. And now there's a lot of different things to go ahead and I mean, which is great. There's a lot of things, though, to deal with, whether they be sponsors or anything else that has to do with guests or anything like that. Mike is managing a lot of those things. I mean, there's people that we both know or that we communicate. We try to get out to different people to try to get them on the show. But as far as the ins and outs of the business itself, Mike, tell us about the time spent on this.
I mean, things are getting easier. Thank God. I think when we started, I was probably putting 20 hours a week into it. I was really working hard. The outlines are easier to write now. We kind of are paying attention. We've got a pattern down a little bit more. So I'm probably in between 5 and 10 hours a week now. But I'm still putting in, and I'm always thinking of things related to it. Even if I'm not physically actually at my computer typing or something like that. So, it's a lot of work to do this the way that we wanted to do it. Now, almost anyone, to be honest, can put out a podcast. Really,
it is pretty.
You can set up a SoundCloud account, get yourself a microphone, right, and just start talking. Doing it at with a production level and quality level that we wanted, with a level of discourse that we wanted, is quite a bit harder. And then to go places and do things like we would like to do, or that we do, like going to ISTE, and we're going to FETC in the winter, and Schoology Next. Those things take work to get there. Like, you can't just, I mean, things cost money, right? And going to ISTE cost us close to $4,000 all total. And that money had to come from somewhere. And so if we want to do stuff like that, you got to work. You got to make sure it's a good quality production so that you can get some sponsors. And we've been lucky with that. Super happy with the way that all of that has worked out for us. And so, it's been work, but I've said it a few times in the last few months, at least, that I'm probably doing the best work of my life right now, I feel. And this is definitely part of it. I'm really proud of what we've done.
Very cool. So I wanted to back up a little bit. So in our previous conversation, you guys, you talked about how you had really different journeys to education, to developing, effective technology strategies, and ultimately coming and converging into the show. I was hoping you could tell me a little bit about that. Since, Glenn, you've been talking first each time, Mike, let's start with you.
I don't know if you want to do that. Glenn and I are both, we come from similar veins in a lot of respects. Our game-based learning backgrounds, our passion for video games in general, and gamification. So that's kind of where, the core, if there was like a core of the things that, we have in common, those are kind of the things that we have in common. We're pretty different in a lot of other ways. And that's what makes the podcast a little more compelling, is that we do have slightly different personalities in a lot of other ways. But my pathway here is as a computer science teacher. Glen is a language teacher, and that's pretty rad. I'm a big fan of Glen's work, and when I was thinking about who to deal with on this, that was a factor, is that we're in two different places, and he's been teaching a lot longer than I have too. I've actually only been teaching for about 7 years. So, actually in the classroom. So there's that as well. I have some other perspectives related to, what I was doing before I was teaching, but it's just, sometimes things just happen and work out, and maybe this is just one of those things. It's been a really cool experience.
Awesome. Do I get to talk now?
I'll let you speak. Sure.
That's awesome. I actually think it's pretty cool once Mike and I actually started talking, because we really didn't know each other. The only thing we knew about each other was what Mike said, the thing that we had related, which was game-based learning and gamification concepts and the passion we have for those things. And then we found out that we have a lot of other things in common. We both are pretty liberal as far as in politics. So we have that in common, but we also come from different backgrounds, and the U.S. Versus Canada kind of perspectives are interesting, I think, especially to our audience. I've had different people comment on that they think that's a cool back and forth between us. That Mike shares kind of what's happening within Canada, what it's like to be a Canadian, and have healthcare system and the way that their education system works, and then the different perspectives here as far as the politics that are concerned within education itself. And then my background, I like to talk about that. My inspiration for everything that has come through education and being a Spanish teacher specifically has been my mom, who was an immigrant into the United States. And I always tell people she was an illegal immigrant, so that people understand that, the lies and myths being perpetuated about people who are coming here are not true most of the time. That a lot of people come here because they want a better life. And that's kind of the story of the United States. And I like to make sure that people know that's my number one inspiration, is my mother coming to the United States and basically giving us, my brother and I, a better life. And then I like to make sure I share that story with others, teachers, students, community members, and then just so they can know that kind of like what my perspective is at and why I'm so passionate about teaching and passionate about the Spanish language and culture.
Right. And, I'm curious also about at least a lot of the stories that I've heard, working in education technology for a while. There are those aha moments when teachers are in it for a while, or even maybe a few years. Maybe they've been using education technology since the beginning.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's something that they kind of picked up along the way. And I'm just curious if you guys have any sort of aha moments, or could tell me like what it was like before you really started effectively using technology versus when you really got your groove in it. What was that like?
I've told this story a couple times, and it's a little bit of hero worship, I guess. But when I was in teachers college, and doing my B.Ed, I read Kurt Squire's PhD thesis. I don't know how it came up. I think I was talking about like games-based learning and video games a lot, like in my classes, but didn't really have like any academia to back up all my nonsense. And so I started kind of looking around. I'm looking for ammunition for these debates I was having in my B.Ed classes on, why I thought video games could be used in class. And I found Kurt Squire's paper on Civilization 3 and history, and teaching it, using it to teach in elementary class. And I was like, it was like a lightning bolt in my head. It's like, oh my God, I could do this. Like, this is real. And he's showing me how to do it. And it was like a light went off in my head. And then I found other things. And then I found Jane McGonigal's book and her TED talk on how, video gamers are, these, we should be cherishing these people and fostering this culture of gameplay, because people who play games are dedicated to completing tasks and winning things. And we need people who are desperate to win, because we have so many problems. We have lack of clean water, and we have oil that's disappearing, and wars and famines and all of these things going on. And we need smart people to solve those problems. And, we solve those problems all the time in video games, to be honest. And so we need these gamers to grow up and become scientists and psychologists and sociologists and astronauts and all of these things that we need to solve all of these problems and to tackle them as if it was that game that they loved playing when they were a kid, that they spent hours and hours and hours just smashing their lives against to finish and to beat that monster. And it was an earth-shattering moment for me in my Bachelor of Education to realize that I found like the proof I was looking for. And I've actually told Kurt, because we've talked now, which is weird for me. This is another weird experience of the podcast, is my heroes now will talk to me on Twitter. And I've told Kurt my story about this, and he loves it. He thought it was great. But that's what it was for me, for sure.
How about you, Glenn?
So I think even before I got into gamification or game-based learning, I was just wanting to push the boundaries of what could be possible inside of my Spanish classroom. So I've never been satisfied with even this previous year's status quo. So I wanted to push those boundaries with whatever tech was available to me. And that started off with, old tech like smart boards, which me and Mike have had some discussions about those.
Smart boards are awesome.
and then it progressed to I read a blog post by this guy named Chris Aviles, and he is a Teched Up teacher. Yeah, Teched Up teacher. Yeah. And his first blog post that he wrote, I was like, oh my goodness, I love what this guy's talking about as far as how he's using gamification. He was basically telling us his journey. And it was fantastic. His journey in his literature classes of how he was using gamification. So I started basically, emulating and borrowing a bunch of the things that he was using. And then just by happenstance, I was coaching basketball that year, and my assistant coach told me, you should take a course by this guy, Dr. Haskell. And I was I already had my master's degree, and I was like, who is that? And why should I take a course? You know what I mean? It's like he's like, no, this is right up your alley. And so the course is called Teaching and Learning in Digital Worlds, or in Virtual Worlds. And I took the course just by the recommendation of my friend. I didn't need it or anything. I just was like, well, let's just see what happens. And that was my aha moment, because Dr. Haskell basically had us as graduate students participating in a class in these different virtual worlds, including Minecraft. And so one of my first projects, if you want to call them that, was building a world that then exploded, as far as people wanting to know more about it, which was kind of this commerce world that I built. So it would immerse my students in the Spanish language while they were role playing as different careers within the world of Minecraft. And so I was just kind of borrowing a little combination of what Dr. Haskell taught us, and then also what Chris Aviles was doing, which was documenting what was happening. Because I didn't find anything online or on YouTube that anybody else was doing. So I was like, I'm just going to create YouTube videos, and I'm going to write down everything that I do, and however it goes, it goes. And it just happened to be that it became the thing that I was like, okay, this is something that I can do, and it's something that I can share with people of how to go about doing this. And it really is making a humongous difference as far as for my classes, engagement, but also just the ability for my students to go ahead and stay in the Spanish language, which was a big push that I wanted to make sure happened.
He is selling himself short a little bit there. He used Minecraft to teach Spanish.
It's crazy. Yeah, that's actually that was one of my aha moments with gamification. Is so, Mike, you're talking about some hero worship. Glenn, I'm going to take this opportunity here. Gamification was always something that I remember playing Reader Rabbit in school, and I thought that was it. That was like the pinnacle of what it meant. And then seeing what you've done with Minecraft to teach the human body in Spanish. Okay, build this giant human body in Minecraft. And then build a roller coaster, a working roller coaster that goes around that, all of that. And then you videotaped it and everything. That was, I mean, that was definitely just kind of, I don't want to say earth shattering. I'm not sure it was that level, but man, it was something special. It definitely pulled the wool off my eyes, I'd say.
Yeah. And I mean, my students were just so ready to go ahead and take this leap with me. They knew it was something strange and different, but they were ready. Like, they were like, yeah, we could do this. This is going to be, and they were also willing to go ahead and play along, which is super important when you're talking about playful learning or gamification, whatever it might be, that you gotta, especially with my high school students, talking about 16 to 18-year-old kids, having to pretend that they're role playing different things and then staying again within the confines of the Spanish language, which can be very difficult. But it was almost like a fun game that we did every single day, so it didn't seem like it was actual hardcore learning, which it wasn't. It was just super fun, and learning was just it was part of what was actually happening within the class.
Yeah, so that makes me wonder. So I started working in education technology in 2012. Gamification, game-based learning, at least it was pretty niche as far as I could tell. And I maybe I'm wrong about that. You feel free to correct me, but it was on my radar. Just, it wasn't like I'm not sure it had taken off the way it has now. But it is becoming a regular term in the educational lexicon these days. So, how have you seen the growth of this? Like, what's that been like for you? And Mike, go ahead and
I think that
start with you.
It's funny. I spoke at ISTE in 2014 on Minecraft, and I might have been one of the only sessions that had any serious games-based learning element in it. And then you go to ISTE last year, and it's everywhere. And I mean, like the booth alone for Minecraft on the show floor was gigantic, right? I mean, it's exploded. And I think I try to remind people that it's not exploding without reason. It's not exploding because, I mean, there are some reasons, and some of them have little to do with education. There is a whole generation of people growing up to be educators that played a lot of video games. It coincides with, people who were teens in the 90s played video games constantly. And now those people are adults and can make decisions and are wanting to take their passions and use them, in their jobs. I actually joke all the time that my goal in life is to bring my hobbies as close to my work as humanly possible. And I'm getting really good at that. And I think that that's what a lot of other people are trying to do too. I mean, Glen loves video games, and and we have a lot of friends that are educators that love video games and grew up with them, and now we're just using them because we think that that this is a fun way to work and to learn. But it doesn't come without like backup. Like, I could drown you in paperwork telling you, I use that term all the time, but I could dump a truckload of journal articles on your desk now about how games-based learning is effective and why it's effective and best practices and models. So it's not like it doesn't have any academia in its corner either. So and in the end, I mean, I think I say this probably every other or every third podcast, but we need to teach kids where they are, not where we want them to be. Our kids are home and they're doing the things they love, and we need to find a way to let them do the things they love at school too, because when they do the things they love at school, they'll do whatever it is that they're doing better. And if we can find a way to get them to do their math better and their language better and their social studies better, why wouldn't you use whatever tool that is? And I think that those tools in a lot of cases are games. So that's I guess my 2 cents on that.
Yeah. So as a follow up on that, Glen, it sounds like Mike is somewhat talking about it's maybe somewhat a generational thing. I grew up with games. therefore I'm using games. I see the benefit of that. Are there any other elements to this that you see in the meteoric rise of game-based learning?
I think that people have found out that and done studies and really done used it in classes and really have some evidence behind why it is such an effective way of teaching. So it's not just like what Mike just said, he has tons of research behind it now. And I think a lot of people are now taking it more seriously, I would say. But then the other part too is that a lot of us are sharing how to do it right also, because there's a lot of things, and Mike and I have talked about this, that we did wrong, getting started with game-based learning and some different things that we now we're like, oh, we should have done this differently, which is anything in teaching, especially at the beginning. But more and more people are willing to share those things, whether it be within articles or videos on YouTube or books that are being written like by Matt Farber or Dr. Haskell, whoever was writing these different books. They're actually talking basically now, how do you go about doing this? And then when I go speak at places, to teachers, I just tell them, choose the things that you think will work for you right now, and then make a long-term plan about those things that you can go ahead and use later on in your class with some planning. And another, maybe a misconception too, is that this is easy to do, and it's not. It takes a lot of planning, and maybe takes more planning than regular lesson plans to make it really effective. Oh, yeah. Mike and I have talked about this, that we spend hours basically kind of play testing this, and we even use some of our students and sometimes our children to be able to play test what we're about to do in our classes, because we don't want to basically use Minecraft in a way where we're ruining the game. So that's the number one element that I always tell people. If you're going to use something, make sure that it still has the element of fun in it, that you haven't you haven't ruined that part, the play. Exactly right. That you haven't ruined that, because then that sours that then for everybody else. So you want to make sure kind of know what you're doing, but there's so much information out there about how to do it. There's lesson plans. There's all these things that highly encourage other teachers to take the leap and at least try it at a very, at a low level, which would be like kind of like gamification kind of elements in your classes, which would be kind of like Michael Matera describes. And then push yourself to then say, okay, can I actually add games, whether they be physical board games, because you can use those too. They don't have to be video games. We've seen tons of people using adapting board games to fit into different things into their classroom. And there's some amazing examples of that too. So just kind of like being willing, number one, to go ahead and do it, and then doing some background research, and then being able to go ahead and implement it and take the risk.
And board games are making a comeback, right? I mean, there are some pretty legit board games.
What a crazy thing,
now.
Huh?
So I predict that you're going to see a lot of these same game-based teachers that are into video games. A lot of them are also into board games. And I think you're going to see, a bit of a renaissance on board games in the classroom. But not just playing, commercial board games, but even like things like making your own board games. I've had this vision in my head for years of getting a hold of a bunch of 3D printers and then having kids create their own pieces and their own tools and their own items for a board game and making the board game themselves. We have that technology now. And I think it'd be
We've
rad
had
to
that
see.
technology a long time, Mike.
Yeah.
I think that was a project that I worked on in like second grade, if I'm not mistaken.
But you know what I'm saying? Like to make your
really cool.
3D printing, to take it and make plastic figures and stuff would be, it'd be rad. I can't get over it.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. How do we adapt Warhammer to education?
OnEducation is brought to you by Audible.
So I got to tell you about this book. So I'm reading a book called You Can't Spell America Without Me. It's written by Alec Baldwin. And it's in Trump's vernacular, like it's in his voice, like it's written. It's like as if it was written by Donald Trump. Okay. And so I'm reading it, and I'm thinking every time I'm reading it, I I'm hearing Donald Trump's voice reading it to me. So I looked up on Audible if it was there, and I'm telling you it's there.
Oh,
so this is Alec Baldwin in the voice of Donald Trump reading the book You Can't Spell America Without Me. You've gotta listen to this. It is an absolute nightmare of a book. It's hysterical. So all that you guys have to do to listen to You Can't Spell America Without Me is go to audibletrial.com/oneducation. That's audibletrial.com/oneducation, and you will get a free audiobook download, which you should totally use for You Can't Spell America Without Me by Alec Baldwin, read to you by Alec Baldwin in the voice of Donald Trump. There's nothing better. So go do that, like, right now.
Okay, so you guys cover a lot of topics. It's something that when I heard you were doing an education podcast, I was kind of expecting it to stay or to be more narrow in kind of the topics, but you guys tackle politics, gaming, obviously, K-pop, even life itself.
Yeah.
So, do you feel like this approach where you're treating education and educators as more complex, multifaceted, varied in interest, is long overdue for this space?
Mike?
I think a lot of our feedback that we got, first off, we covering the politics in particular, very early on when just Glen and I were talking and stuff, we realized that, I mean, thank God, I guess, that we aligned very well politically. Pretty similar political views. And that was a relief, I guess. I hadn't really even thought of it, to be honest, until I thought about it. And I was like, oh my God, what if he's a crazy right-wing Republican guy?
That actually might have been interesting, though, too.
It might have been interesting, sure. But it would have been a lot.
Important to have that dialogue.
Well, I don't know if I could get on the air and argue with you every day. So I mean, that's been interesting. So, and we're passionate about this stuff, like especially about the politics, and we do realize that it's important. It's not just important for society in general, but it's important for education, and it's important that we have those conversations. But also, one of the things that has come up, and it's been part of not our marketing, so to speak, but we've used the term. This is kind of like the lunchroom a little bit, in the sense that I think that some of the feedback I've gotten is that people like that we don't just, hi, welcome, we're going to talk about education today, and we're going to talk about assessments. People like that we don't do that, because there are podcasts that do that. We listened to them, and we didn't want to be that. We wanted to have fun. We wanted to laugh. We wanted other people to laugh and to talk about things we liked to talk about. But then we still have like serious conversations about education. We're still having detailed conversations with people, and we want to talk to the smartest people about the most timely and interesting topics. And I think that that's what we've done. It's about balance. And I think that, I loved talking to Refrance Davis about K-pop, and we found a way. I mean, we turned that into a really good conversation about education. If you listen to that episode, we talked about how that relates to education and how kids should be passionate about.
I think too, what Mike was just saying, that people's reactions, at least what they've told us, either through our reviews or they've told me to my face, is their favorite parts are just me and Mike talking back and forth on a variety of different topics, sometimes arguing, sometimes agreeing with each other, but basically doing the really showing that teachers have a diverse array of topics that they're interested in. So it's not just specifically education. It's not specifically just, politics and education, but it's a variety of different things that we might be interested in, ed tech. And so we try to pick out different topics of those. And then sometimes our conversations just end up getting steered to other things, which is awesome. I think those are the best conversations that we have, which then feel I think they give people a connection to us then too. It's like we're more authentic because we want to make sure we have an authentic conversation between us.
100%.
And speaking of that, so this has been brought up before, and anyone who's listened to your podcast knows probably that, Mike, you're in Canada, Glen, you're in the U.S., and so that gives your discourse about education politics, an interesting dynamic. Do you feel that educators should be more openly discussing these these ideas about politics these days, and even with such a broad audience as you are?
I think that it's important to talk about the politics. It's important to talk about American politics. For me, I know more about U.S. politics than any Canadian should.
That's so true, though.
And I practice pretty legit amounts of restraint, I feel, on this podcast because I'm angry. I'm losing it up here over what's going on down there, because what goes on down there affects what goes on up here in tons of ways. Not just like the NAFTA and that kind of stuff and immigration. I mean, we can talk about those things, but even just like society in general, the toxicity of the dialogue is starting to filter up here. And they're taking their cues from Donald Trump, and it's a permission slip to be the biggest jerk that you can possibly be, and there's no getting around it anymore. So we're having to deal with it, and this filters into education in so many ways. Hiring people in charge of education that are completely unqualified to be in charge of education, and it's down there, and now it's happening up here too. I mean, we've talked about the Ontario election, and how we elected Doug Ford, and it's beyond me how that happened, but it did, and so now we have our own issues to deal with in terms of a conservative government that is really doing some pretty serious damage. If any of our listeners want to go look up what Doug Ford's doing to the health/sex ed curriculum in Ontario, you'll see some pretty serious damage, and he's only been in office for like 4 months. It's important to talk about the politics. This stuff affects us. It affects our kids. I have kids that go to school. Glenn has kids that go to school, and we want our kids to have every opportunity and the best education possible. And politics impacts that. And so it's important that we talk about that. And, if I'm Canadian, and listen, like I just said, I don't care that I'm Canadian and talking about American politics. If you have a problem with what I'm saying about U.S. politics, come on the show and come at me. It's fine. Let's go. I'm good. So, I would love to have contrary opinions. Maybe they're afraid of me. I don't know.
What I think is an interesting dynamic between Mike and I is we have to, a lot of times in the United States, as teachers, be careful with what we say about politics. I think that's a very it's like an unspoken rule because we have a country that's split between two completely opposing sides of the political spectrum, and lots of people in the middle between these two spectrums that shift one way or the other depending upon the year, the election year. So I think it's hard to talk about politics. So this is I thought this was a kind of a nice platform to be able to do that, and be able to kind of just let people listen and either they agree or disagree. And people have told us that they listen to the podcast, but they disagree a lot with the politics. But that's what I tell Mike too, is that it's hard to understand how wide the gap is between the two political sides. And so because it's so wide, it creates a lot of tension and people just really don't want to talk about it. It's one of those things where you're like, is it safe to say what I want to say here, or should I just keep my mouth shut? Kind of that thing. So it gives them a forum to be able to listen to these things and then be able to go ahead and do something about it, which we always talk about. Hey, you can go ahead and write your legislators. You can talk to them. They work for you. And of course, when it comes time to vote on the topics that matter as educators. And here they are, and we presenting those things too.
Well, I'm thinking about, having this have been a great platform for you. It's working in education. I don't know about in Canadian education as much. I know in U.S. education can be really frustrating. And I mean, there's so much pressure and responsibility, and there's, Glenn, as you're saying, there's not always an easy way to vent because there's that unspoken rule, maybe to not talk about it, or a lot of times teachers or educators feel like they're an island. Right. They don't really have anyone to talk to. It's less so these days, I think, since tech has been, really bringing everyone into communities. But, how, other than the politics, how has this podcast been a cathartic experience for you, Mike?
I mean, I'll tell you, the venting about politics has been a cathartic experience for me. So I'm glad I get to come on somewhere and complain for a little bit anyways.
Everyone has to listen.
Yes. I have a captive audience. I'm sure they fast forward. You have that ability now, I suppose. Oh, Mike's talking again. Let's move on. I've enjoyed this a lot. I've enjoyed talking and getting ideas. We've talked to some of the coolest friggin' people.
Brilliant people.
Like, I mean, I think it really hit me when we had Paul DeVarzy on, and he wrote a blog post for us, and we read that thing, and it was like, oh my God, this is brilliant. Oh my, it's so good. I didn't even know. Like, and then we talked to him, and it's like so good. It was amazing, and it inspired me. And Rafranz and Steve and Mike Cohen and all of these people that we've talked to have just inspired the hell out of me. And I'm just, I get up and I'm wanting to do even half as close a good a job as they do at what I'm doing. So, I mean, it's definitely got me going. I think about what these guys are doing in the mornings and what they're doing at work, and they're inspiring. And so I'm trying to go and do the same thing, work just as hard or harder, and keep up with some of these folks. Cause it's hard keeping up, but that's when you're doing the best work is when you can keep up with some of the folks that we've talked to. You're batting at a whole different level. And that's been exciting.
It's also awesome. I mean, the perspective of being able to have these amazing educators out there, them sharing their ideas, and then this huge audience being able to listen to those and getting inspired, just like what Mike just was saying, but giving our audience the ability to kind of take a peek into what is Rafranz Davis really thinking about, and what does she get passionate and inspired with, which was a completely different, it went a completely different direction than we ever thought as far as in the interview, but it actually ended up being super powerful to say, hey, you know what? Teachers are very diverse beings, and that's okay. We want that, and we want people to be passionate about a variety of things and not just be work centric. I think a lot people have told us that. Several guests have said, I need to make sure that I take a step back away from work, and then that I make sure that I'm a whole person. And that's a great message to share with our audience and all of our teachers out there who, like you just said, Dylan, sometimes are isolated. They work and live in a silo. So we want to make sure that they can hear these messages of what it could possibly be, and then how do you go about doing those things. Very cool. So do you think that more educators should be taking advantage of this golden age of podcasting?
No.
You don't want competition, Mike? I think it's a great way to reflect.
That's my canned answer.
That's not the answer I was expecting.
I think they should. I think it's an awesome way to reflect.
Totally.
I think for me, it's a lot easier than writing. Like Mike is a very, very good writer, but it's easier for me to just speak and talk about my ideas than it is to go ahead and put them down eloquently, for example, in a blog post. So it's an easy way to be able to get your ideas out. And like Mike said, there's a lot of different ways of being able to go ahead and make this happen, record it and being able to publish it and send it out to the world so that other people get to hear your story, your journey in your teaching career.
If you're a communications teacher or a media teacher in high school and you're not doing a podcast, you're wrong. Like, I mean, flat out, this is an awesome project. It'd be amazing for a high school to have a podcast, and you could. It is not hard, folks, to do this, to do it like just to get it up and going. It's like get a SoundCloud account and some microphones and write an outline, and then learn as you go. But I mean, what a great project this would be for any. I say at the high school level. Because high school students could probably kind of do it on their own. If it was at an elementary level, you could still do it totally. You would just have to, hold their hands a little bit more and walk them through it a lot more and guide it. But I mean, for any community group, any educators community, I mean, a lot of them are doing it already, which is great. But I mean, it's an awesome project to just get into, and people should be doing it for sure.
So for those who are just starting out, what would you tell them, apart from obviously mentioning that it's easy technically? What advice would you give them getting started that you've learned along the way?
I think the outline is really important. At least at the start, we worked really hard on the outlines. In the beginning, it was taking us a week to put together a really good outline. And it's like Glenn and I are both on an outline page right now on Google Docs. And our outline page is 4 pages long. It's got your questions on it. It's got, our notes. It's got production notes. It's got our advertising notes. It's got other content on it. But it was even longer when we first started. We were writing 6, 7, 8 page outlines until you get into the habit of how to do it and you develop a pattern and a rhythm. The outline is critical. But then being able to present that outline as if you didn't have one is, I guess, the next part. The performance side of this has always been an interesting aspect to me because I thought I would suck at it a lot more than I do. Because I actually have a phobia of talking to people in large crowds, like doing the presenting stuff, ISTE and Schoology Next. I don't like doing those things. I do them because I'm trying to push outside my boundaries in my box and learn how to get better at those things. But this talking into a microphone has been a really interesting and fun experience for me. But yeah, the outline and then performing the outline as if you didn't have one is probably a pretty.
And I think having compelling topics, something compelling to talk about on a consistent basis, so that you build up an audience. So I think that would be the combination of those things. You then have something good. You have a product, people want to listen to it, something compelling to listen to and talk about. Then you run into something.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that. Not only is it compelling, but it's also something that you're passionate about. You never know what people are going to be passionate about.
That's very true.
Right. And just doing something, putting it out there. There's some crazy things out there. I don't know. I can't think of any off the top of my head, just that you could build a coalition of people who are interested in this. The people who do the podcasts, I think that when interviewed podcasts or different media, and they're interviewed, how it started. A lot of times, very often it's like, we just started doing this because we wanted to, right? We were passionate about this topic and we had no idea it was going to blow up like this. Right. I think they often come from humble roots. So
we, when we talk to our hosting service is not a normal hosting service. We pay for it, but it's a closed community. You have to be invited to be on it. And the hosting service we deal with hosts some of the biggest podcasts on the planet. Pod Save America and NPR, not NPR, but New York Times, The Daily are all hosted by these guys. And when we first started, I got on a call with them and I said, listen, there are 8 million teachers in North America. And don't you think that some of them are going to want to listen to a podcast about teaching? And they just went, yeah, totally. And that was what got us kind of in that door, which was hilarious. I think that there is a constituency for this. And it's growing, exponentially, and we're couldn't be happier with how things have gone.
So just thinking back, if you could, okay, so you're here now, you're at the top, nowhere to go from here, right? You reached it.
We could get
the pinnacle.
We could be toppy.
No, I know. But then looking back at your former selves, what would you tell your former selves just starting out? What advice would you have for them? Maybe if there's a particular thing you ran into that, don't go down that road, or whatever it is. How would you? What would you tell your past selves who are just starting out?
That's a really good question, Mike. You got an answer for that?
I to be honest, I still don't think I do this as well as I could. I think I'm still wordy. Glen can attest to that. I think I talk too much. And I talk for a living these days, but I'm still trying to get us into a better pattern. There's still work to do. Listen, if you're not constantly trying to improve, then So I always listen to these things and see where we could do better. So we spend a decent amount of time at the top of the ed tech charts and stuff like that. There's a lot of room to grow still, and we're wanting to just keep getting better at it. So I'm still thinking about ways I would
tell my former self to just relax during because the initial podcasts were kind of robotic on my end. I just wanted to make sure I followed the script and I was saying certain things or blah, 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 whatever it might be. But really the best thing for anybody doing this, and for myself starting at the beginning, was just, if you just relax and just have a normal conversation, then great things will happen. Because that's what this is about. Just basically having a conversation on interesting topics and then having a back and forth dialogue, which I think has been the best part of how we've grown through for the last few months.
Very cool. Well, hey guys, this has been awesome. It's been a pleasure of mine. I've had my own podcast equipment for a while, and I've never used it for a podcast, if you can believe it. So this is the first opportunity I got, and it's an honor to talk with you guys. It's really cool what you're doing, and just keep doing it.
Awesome.
Just keep going.
Thanks for joining us, Dylan. This has been a blast, and hopefully we'll have you on, and we'll talk again soon.
Definitely. We'll talk soon.
OnEducation is an podcast media production. My name is Mike Washburn. My co-host is Glen Irvin. You can get in touch with us or ask us questions to answer on air by visiting our website, oneducationpodcast.com. You can tweet us at OnEducationPod. Glen is at Irv Spanish on Twitter. I can be found on Twitter at Mr. Washburn. Our sound engineer is Jake Codeweiss. He's on Twitter at JK Radio. You can find us on Facebook by visiting facebook.com/OnEducationPod. If you're enjoying the show and think others would too, we would be honored if you shared it with them. Please leave us a rating or review in Apple Podcasts or the Google Play Store. When you leave a rating, it gives our rankings a boost. This helps others discover the show. We want to thank our presenting sponsor, Schoology, for supporting us. Check out Schoology.com to learn how they can help you advance what's possible. Thanks as always for listening. Stay awesome. See you soon.